Have you ever thought about using trading bots? I used Bitsgap in the last bull market and turned $1,000 into $50,000 within a 5-month period. I documented the whole process and put it in a playlist if you want to see that, along with other training videos and tutorials how to set bots up and make the most of the volatility of the crypto market. If you sign up with a link in the description, you'll get a 7 days free trial with no obligation to continue, and you can also use a demo account within Bitsgap so you don't have to risk your own capital. Bitsgap! Good morning, everybody. So it's the morning after the night before, and we're looking at the state of the Dixie and obviously the state of Bitcoin, which both dropped together. It's not the end of the world. Yesterday we saw the bounce on the 21 exponential, which is often used as a really good dip buying area, but because of the time of day that it happened, and we were watching this on the live stream last night thinking, look, I mean, I'd love to consider this a dip buy, and for those with the balls, that's fine to do that, but I made the analogy. I often have to do this on the streams, because people obviously want answers. I said, look, if there's a gun to my head and I had to make a trade and it's got to go one way or another, my life depends on it, I would buy the dip. But again, there's nothing worse than buying a dip and then going to bed. My God, can you imagine? Anyway, so hindsight, looking at this now, that bounce is good, and we closed above the Bollinger Band Center itself, which is so far being retested as a support. So actually, it kind of looks okay on a daily. It's still a bit early, definitely early to call for a reversal on this one, as in like either direction. To be honest with you, the 4-hourly is obviously looking a little tired, but it's not broken down. In fact, you could come all the way down to the magical number 33,000 now, 33,600 specifically, where we could find a really epic bounce based on that 4-hourly. Last time we managed to float around the 200 exponential or the simple, we ended up having an enormous rally up to the top of the range. So that's good, but I have to say, the best thing about this is that it reminds me of the 2020 to 2021 scenario where an alt season really kicked in, and every dip that was given to us by Bitcoin, after it had basically reached a very particular area on the chart, quite close to this specific area really, around the 40,000 zone, alt seasons happened. So dips were given to us by Bitcoin, they were handed to us by Bitcoin, and then when the dips were being bought, they weren't buying the Bitcoin dips. Bitcoin continued to go into a downtrend and consolidated for about a month. It was all the way over, come on baby, all the way over here. So we had this big run on Bitcoin, peaked around 41,600 and then consolidated down to the tune of about 30%. Throughout this period, which doesn't look like much, it was a very exciting time in crypto. Big move up, big down. Yeah, the dip was bought, but if this was an altcoin, it would have shot right up. We were doing hundreds of percents during this downtrend. So these things can happen. I'm not saying that this is the most likely scenario. It's definitely not an unlikely scenario. And part of the reason I'm feeling this way is because if we turn our attention over to the Bitcoin dominance chart, surprisingly, it's continuing to go down, regardless of how hard altcoins were hit. That is actually a very telling indication that dips are being bought and should probably be bought on altcoins until we reach areas on the chart such as 50% dominance, 200 simple exponential standard stuff really. Have a look on the 4-hourly on this one. We can see how tired this one's looking with a fresh death cross on this one, short signals, the whole shebang. Makes it look more tired on the 4-hourly with the destination to around 50% dominance. Again, we've been surfing this, if you want to call it an alt season, it's up to you, but we've been making gains on altcoins now for about 5 or 6 weeks, and it looks like we should possibly and probably have an extension on those rallies to 50% dominance. A couple of the altcoins that we were looking at yesterday, surprisingly strong versus Bitcoin, were, and you won't believe it, Algo. Yep, that's right. So Algo has basically had nothing but heartache and hard times. But actually, when you look at it on its own chart, despite the pathetic volume, which actually could end up being a blessing in disguise if this takes off, has a very nice looking chart here on the daily. So yesterday, Just a simple pullback really onto a 10 exponential where it's held. Looks like it's moving up. So the next target on sats on this one's going to be around 414 to possibly 474. And at that point we decide whether or not this is nothing more than a death cross retest or we break out. Same thing over here with Atom as well. Atom looking quite good. So we had our own sort of pullback based on its own chart. The tether pair was basically a rejection from the exact range. Well, it wasn't perfect, but it was excuse me, it was close to perfect really. Talking to about 1020 was the support, the resistance, and so we shot through it. The candle bodies on the 4 hourly suggest that actually there was a bit of respect taking place on that area, and now we're being bought back up again with a view to make our way back up to 1020. See where we go from there. But the Bitcoin pair looks quite good. The 4 hourly golden cross continuing to move up. Yeah, we had a pullback to the 50 exponential, moving back up, and obviously we were admiring that daily as well, which is caught a move on a 7 simple today and a 10 exponential yesterday. Very neat and tidy, and that's what I like about charts. You know, some of these altcoins that we look at on Patreons or just in general, they're not neat and they're not tidy. I'm not saying that they're not respecting some form of trading analysis, but it's not mine. Absolutely not mine. Whereas this one is, and so I'd be pretty confident to think that actually Atom is going to have a bit of a tear up. It's going to first of all move up to these areas, just similar to Algo is 3057, so basically 200 simple exponential. That is just a death cross retest is all it is in the short term. We'll have to see if that breaks, because if it does break, you'll be looking to move up to 4,000. So look, there is a very good indication that buying the dip on altcoins is a good idea. But, you know, I was trying to put it across. I reiterate this message probably quite a lot. No altcoin is created equal. We started off this alt season, you know, with a bit of a tongue-in-cheek, really, trying to make trades on certain things that, well, nothing had moved at the time. But some setups were better than others, and this is going back, like I say, into last month. And we started off with, of all things, BSV actually worked out. That ran. It's not moved up since that initial run. So you jump out of that coin into the next. What's got the next best setup? Jump out of that coin into the next. And so rather than trying to play, I mean, this is my strategy, rather than trying to play coins which have already gone pretty crazy, doubled, tripled in value, which some of these coins have, it's now a matter of finding the ones which are brewing the setups which are going to perhaps maybe double from here. Again, jumping from one to the next, to the next, to the next. And guess what? At the end, you either go into Tether or move into Bitcoin. This isn't parabolic alt season. This is just an alt season. Like, we often get offered an alt season every year, and this is the 2023 alt season, which is probably going to be okay. It's not going to be bad. You should be, you know, by the end of this, if you'd have been lucky enough or paid enough attention to detail, and you should have at least doubled, tripled, quadrupled or more your money throughout this period. But in standard altcoin season fashion, thou giveth, thou taketh away, and that's my expectation, is that whatever pump gets given, some of them will hold a higher value and be sitting in particular lows, but not all of them. Some of them will probably come back down to square one, or maybe even more than that. So, you know, there's no guarantees either way, but it's still worthy of being careful. But right now, it does appear, especially with the way that Bitcoin looks, it is a buy the dip scenario. We don't particularly care if Bitcoin makes a lower high at the moment. I'm not too bothered about that. It can bounce, it can hold this area, it can move up, it can get rejected at any one of these areas and then move back down again. So long as we're taking profit on altcoins, ready to buy the next altcoin dip, I think that that's probably the best way to play this market. Hodling, absolutely fine. Like I say, I'm a big believer in hodling and you know, waiting for brighter days some point next year or 2025. Hodl strategy is absolutely fine so long as you're hodling the right thing, clearly, and staking as well throughout that period. You can't really go wrong. But if you're trading, then yeah, I think what we're going to see is maybe a lower high on Bitcoin and another dip. Buy the altcoin dip. Use Bitcoin as the indicator to work out if and when it's time to get out of that particular altcoin. It's a relatively simple strategy, and again, you know, it's not a perfect one. It does remind me of 2021. but it does not mean that we're going to be seeing the same kind of returns as 2021, but the same kind of strategy is what appears to be most likely. So again, Bitcoin above 35,500 is good. Bitcoin above 35,000 is also good. Losing this area, we'll have to turn our attention down to the 4-hourly, and the next major area is going to be 33,500. Again, all of these areas, I would say, dip buying on altcoins. Obviously, we can come all the way down to 31,800 and have that horizontal, and that would be a dip buying opportunity also. Also, the weekly, we can't dispute how awesome the weekly looks. A trend signal on the Ichimoku cloud still in play. No blue crossing the red. Cheeky spans all the way up here. We need to close the weekly inside price action, which would be, for the moment, a closure below 28,000, and still maintain the uptrend on this one. So, dips to be bought. But, like I say, this is just the way it looks as of today. The morning after the night before. And as much as we were talking about potentially buying dips, I had to have that analogy of having a gun to my head yesterday to call it. And so far this morning, that call would appear to be an appropriate call. But I didn't buy any dips yesterday, just to put it out there. So as much as you'll see people boasting and tweeting and saying all this kind of stuff, yeah, I said on the stream last night that I would buy the dip if my life depended on it. But that's not the reality. My life didn't depend on it, so I didn't buy the dip. It's worthy of just scouting through altcoins at this point now to work out who's who and what's what, and actually if this is going to continue. Not only that, but we have to think about traditional markets and how the Dixie looks. Because if the Dixie starts to rebound from that particular area that it's bounced down, that it's dropped down to, then you would be looking for a negative effect on markets. That's the normal scenario. It doesn't mean it has to happen, but that would be the normal scenario. At the moment, we are having a little bit of a bounce. There was two things that we were looking at yesterday to help determine whether they're going to get continuation on this pullback on the Dixie. One of them being the dollar-yen, which, despite having an uptrend, has had many signals of bearish divergence on this daily. And we also recognise that there was a very overheated money flow index read over here on the weekly, which it doesn't always, and actually when we back tested it wasn't particularly accurate, although it does have some degree of hit rate, suggest a deeper retracement. So that means dollar falling versus yen. So that would dollar yen is one portion of what makes up the Dixie. So there is some evidence to say that this might be a significant top on the dollar yen. And if that's the case, you'd be looking for a decent retracement similar to this one, maybe not quite as fast, but similar to that one. The only other thing that's really worth taking note of, and probably the more important, would be euro dollar, which is bouncing up quite significantly and approaching a significant resistance, which is 109.38. That's where I would be looking for a major resistance. But again, based on the weekly, we can go a little higher and a little higher than that. This could still be, floating onwards and upwards for even more gains. I wouldn't feel comfortable shorting this. I wouldn't feel comfortable longing this. The economic data that came through yesterday caused this move, and normally when you get such a move like that, unless it's really significant, there will be a move counter to that. Obviously, we call it a buy the rumour, sell the news event. But long story short, I suppose from the fundamentals of all of this, the Federal Reserve are unlikely to raise rates. I've been saying that for a couple of months now, and I think that's almost a certainty. And maybe at some point later on, they will start to lower rates. And so what we're looking at really is a move that will trend in this particular direction over time, but in the very short term, as in this week, we do want to see if we can break these resistances or if we get rejected from them. Expectation would be to be rejected from it initially and see if we can turn this into an uptrend, but it's very early to say. Like I say, you get a move like that that's given to us by some kind of development outside of the chart. The chart has a habit of basically coming back to find its equilibrium, and that would mean this week. At some point this week, it's going to have to balance out. It's like chucking a stone into a pond. We see the ripples, but eventually the pond makes its way back to the way it should do, which is its natural state, and that's what we're waiting for on this chart. Right, I'll leave it with you there. If there's any particular altcoin you want me to look at today, let me know in the comments. If it's worthy of talking about, absolutely I'll talk about it. Otherwise, I hope you have a nice day. Take it easy.